Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boys Jack and Dave here, back again, and we're going to be discussing a bit of news on the front three and whether there's actually a front three overhaul that's needed this summer. And it comes off the back of Ange Postecoglou's quotes after the West Ham match, and he said, "We got into some good areas, but our final decision making wasn't the best. For the most part, it was okay. The effort was there, but we need to be more clinical." And it kind of made me ask, the question that's been on my mind this whole season, really. Like, are Spurs clinical enough? Do we really have all the options that we should have in order to be a real effective team in the chances that do we create? Because we create so many chances, it just feels like we do kind of waste them on a regular basis. And I had a discussion, with Michael, and we looked at some of the stats, and I think I was proven a little bit wrong, or at least exaggerating some of my feelings about our lack of finishing. But still, it's how I feel about it, and it's how I see this team and where we need to improve on. So, Dave, I think we're going to have a discussion on the current players that we have in this Tottenham front line, and then we'll try to transition towards the end of what type of player we could do or bring in to replace some of these. So, I'm going to start first with maybe a controversial player here who's been on some people's minds, and everyone in the comments, we're going to go through these players one-on-one, kind of just giving our thoughts on their future, what sort of position is best for them, how they can fit in for Spurs, or whether they don't fit in at Spurs. And if you disagree with us, agree with us, feel free to let us know in those comments below, and smash that like button, please, as well. Kulusevski, though, Dave, let's go to him. He's been on everyone's mind recently. Are his days as a winger numbered? Should we even consider him part of the front three any longer?
I would consider him a part of the front three going forward, Jack. Look, when he first came in, let's not forget, he was posting similar numbers to Saka. Now, he's done well underneath Conte at the start last year. He had that massive injury, and he hasn't been right since. He hasn't fully recovered or come back the same player since that hamstring injury that he had when he was out long term. Now, on the right-hand side, I get the frustrations, especially with Brennan Johnson, coming to the fore lately a lot more than what he was originally. I get the frustrations. But if Ange wants direct runners running at his full back, going to the byline and putting the ball across the 6-yard box, why not give Kulusevski the opportunity on the left-hand side, considering he's left-footed? So for me, I wouldn't write it off yet. I hazard a guess that he doesn't give Kulusevski the opportunity on the left is because he's so important defensively on the right-hand side for large parts of this season to sort of originally implement the system and stuff like that. But it is coming to the point where the team is starting to sort of grasp the system and the patterns of play and stuff like that. That maybe Kulusevski is becoming a bit of sort of ineffective in that regard, cutting inside, getting into other players' spaces and stuff like that. But for me, I wouldn't let it off until we see him on the left-hand side. But also, Kulusevski has spoke about himself, wanting to play through the middle. So why not give him an opportunity or run a games in Maddison's position and see what he can do there?
I think it would be great to consider him part of that front three. I feel like we also, though, have to consider a future without him in that front three and maybe more in that midfield, because I think you and I both agree he is better in the central areas. Even you think he has similar sort of attributes to a Harry Kane would, kind of as a center forward who's strong enough to drop deep, pick up the ball, help, kind of bring others into play, has that creativity with him. And at least when we first, saw him come into his Spurs shirt, he did have a good finish on him. I just think recently he's kind of just gotten in his own head a little bit here, Kulusevski. I'd like to think that more his future is kind of slowly going to start being pushed towards the midfield. He's, of course, I think always going to be an option in the front line and in that front three. But at the moment, seems like, his future could be geared more towards that midfield, because he's playing more pacey wingers down the side right now. Postecoglou, he has looked to try to just have his wingers just hug the touchline, stay wide, keep those fullbacks honest. And Kulusevski, I think in the beginning of the season, looked fine with those instructions, but more and more, he's not really been, to even Ange's opinion, executing some of those instructions as much as he would like. So I don't know. Kulusevski, I think for me, has a future in this team. He's a bit like a Havertz, where it's hard to know what is his best position, yet he's still good enough to make the first team and be someone that you usually would pick. It's just what is the best position for him and helping contribute to the team is, I think, a mystery for Kulusevski.
I'm going to have a little bit of offense to Kulusevski here. If people go and look at his stats, he's created some of the most chances from open play in the Premier League this season. Now, coming out of games, we've been very frustrated in terms of not being able to kill teams off this season, maybe not creating as much chances as the possession that we dominate and stuff like that. So, I wouldn't write him out of this front three yet. There is a sort of argument, on not having that main striker all season long. If we had someone there, would his stats be a lot more, a lot better? I'd argue, you look at some of the stats, Son stats off the left, Kulusevski stats off the right this season, they've dwindled. No one wants to talk about why. Because we don't have the big man up front anymore. We've had to sort of, cover over the problem. Charlison's done a great job, and so was some between the two of them. But if they had someone that they knew who'd be up front week in, week out, and was as clinical as the guy we had up front, their stats would actually, I'd argue, especially Kulusevski's, look a lot more.
Two other players that I think Kulusevski's future is certain with us, at least on this channel. So we're going to definitely keep him, around in this team as someone to consider. But two players that they're divisive and they have very differing opinions from the fan base. Let's combine them together here, Dave. Richarlison and Werner. The way I wrote it is, I think Richarlison has done his fair share this season to warrant and to deserve to be included in some sort of version of the front three. He doesn't even need to be a starter for next season, but he's done his fair share to stay in this Spurs squad. But everyone hates him, it feels like, in this fan base, and everybody wants him out of here. Whereas with Werner, I feel like a lot of people have kind of started to like him and maybe have just sort of gained a soft spot for him. But despite having a soft spot for him, is he actually good enough? Right. And that's the other question in mind. So, Dave, Werner and Richarlison, which one of them do you see having a future with this team, having a future in this attack, and which one of them maybe going to have to cut ties with? Or would you like to keep both?
Look, Richarlison's the only natural striker in this club. He can play with his back to goal, when the balls are flying into the box. He's a target man. He's always an option in there. He's the only natural striker we have. Despite people hating him, when Son left, to go and represent South Korea for the international competition, he's the only guy that stepped up with the goals. For me, that shows, that he is important to this team in that sort of regard. He's given us a different option up front this season. At times we've needed it and stuff like that. For me, he's the only other player in double figures alongside Sonny in terms of scoring goals. So that suggests to me that we should keep him. Now, I'm not saying that make him our man next year. I'll advocate, bring someone else in, like I always have done, to provide competition for the guy. But for me, I think he's absolutely fine. I think he's done well the majority of the season when we have relied upon him or called upon him and stuff like that. I think where maybe a lot of the arguments, around Richarlison, I still think people are maybe harness bad feelings towards his contribution last season. You'd maybe argue with the 2 years he's been here, there's been a lot of ups and downs. It's been very tumultuous over the course of that time. I get that. But at the end of the day, he contributes on the football pitch in that forward line. So for me, he's got to stay. When it comes to Timo Werner, my problem with the guy is he goes too hot and cold. You don't know what you're going to get when you play him. For instance, West Ham, he can start off on fire, but then he can fade out the game.
Yeah.
And that's a huge problem for me. When you look at the age of the guy as well, that ain't going to improve. He's coming towards the tail end of his career. He's in the prime age, of his career. That's not going to improve. That's not going to get more consistent. When we're looking at, bringing in players into this forward line, we want guys that are going to be on it week in, week out. When you put them out there, you know exactly what you're going to get. They have to be reliable. And with Timo Werner, for me, he is not reliable. He doesn't solve a problem. It's like, he misses a lot of chances that if he took some of them chances, it makes games a lot easier. So he's not actually solving a problem in that regard for me. So for me, I would not take up the option to take him in here full-time in the summer unless he is brought in here as a squad player and the likes of Gale and people like that who aren't contributing this season are going to be shipped on. But we have plans to bring in players, to come in ahead of him and make him compete with them. I'll be okay with that. But if we're signing him to solve a problem in terms of goals, killing teams off, because when you look at a lot of games this year, even games where we've been caught out, for the amount of possession we have, we are nowhere near creating enough chances. We're nowhere near good enough in front goal. West Ham the other night was prime example of that. Everything was good. Backline was good. Midfield was good. Vicario was brilliant for large parts. But the forward line, at the top this season, how many times have we been left frustrated? Sometimes a lot of games we have when we've been lucky where we've gone bam, bam, quick succession. You're not going to keep getting away with that. You have to pose a constant threat up front all game. And for me, Werner doesn't do that. So I'm not going to take him in.
With Werner, I think he's done a good thing in that he's sort of he's put down a little bit of the I don't know, the criticism and some of the kind of jokes and everything like that that had come into him this season when he did come to the Premier League. Like he had already a reputation. He had already kind of a bit of a laughing stock sort of reputation, I think, amongst a lot of sort of Premier League fans. And for the most part, I think he actually has to a degree kind of silenced some of those critics. Like he hasn't embarrassed himself is the way that I've kind of said it, right? He has contributed. He has shown that he is an effective player at times. He can, be useful. It's just with all that I've said, is that actually really good enough for what we want in the future? I'm not sure, really. Like, I don't think he can hold his head in shame or anything like that. Actually, could probably hold his head quite high with, the bravery that he's come into this season with, knowing, how he left the Premier League last time, was able to see past that, come in and make contributions this season much quicker than other players, I think, have come in previous years and made contributions. So good for him. It's just that I don't know if he's actually good enough for the future, even as a squad player. Really, like, I definitely don't see him ever as a starter in that front three. But even as a squad player, like, is he really the best we can get, or is he really even close to the best we can get? I'm not really too sure, and that's where I struggle with Timo. Where it's like, yeah, actually, fair play to him for silencing some critics, or at least putting some sort of doubt, or getting rid of some of the doubt that people might have had of him in the beginning of the season. But does that really even mean that you are good enough to actually deserve a future here at this club? I'm not so sure. So with Werner, actually, I'd actually look to sort of just move on with him. I think he contributed a lot to us this season already. I'm thankful for that. It's just that I'm not sure if he's someone that I would tie down our future with for that wing. And I definitely don't see him as a front three starter, but I don't even know if I like him as much as an impact sub either, really. And that kind of sort of frees up a spot then potentially this summer. And with Richarlison, like you, I think he's the only target man we've had this season. He's actually done his fair share as a target man this season. So until we get another one, he's definitely has to stay around. And even if we did get another target man, not a bad idea to have sort of two around, kind of like the old days when we had Peter Crouch and other players like that sort of in the team always to pick from. Hill Messi, Dave, I think it is probably the end of the Hill Messi era. And you probably see him, leaving as well. Perisic also left. So there's kind of two free spots there. If we are to see Werner go, that would be three kind of spots opened up. Anything to say on Hill Messi? And then also consider maybe Solomon's future as well, if you wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, when it comes to Gil Messi, goodbye, my lover. Goodbye, my friend. Look, I really wanted it to work out for the guy, Jack, but I think when it was looking like it was starting to work underneath Antonio Conte, they shipped him out and brought in Danuma. And, I think he sort of failed to sort of recover from that. I don't think, he's too invested now, and stuff like that because of that. So for me, I feel sorry for the guy. We've never actually really given him a true opportunity. I understand when you're bringing in defensive managers that might not know what to do with him, but I thought if any manager was going to get the best out of him, it was going to be Postecoglou, but it just hasn't worked out for whatever reason. The back injury that he's had at the start of the season was ill-timed as well. It didn't get him off to a good start, showcasing what he can do and stuff like that. So unfortunately, I think it's come to an end. When it comes to Solomon, it's an interesting one. I actually like what I've seen of him when he played the couple of games at the start of the season. He's direct, he's good on the ball. For me, I think Solomon will be kept around next season for sure.
I'd actually rather have Solomon than Werner, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, because Solomon's younger. I also think he's a better finisher than Werner is. When I did my sort of research on him, and of course, being a bit of a Shakhtar Donetsk hipster, I was well aware of him, before he even came to Tottenham Hotspur. And I've actually liked Solomon for his finishing and for his clinical nature, because if you look at the goals that he did score for Shakhtar, they were in very big games for them and European nights, and also were games that were kind of where they were sitting back, sitting deep, and then hitting teams in transition, hitting teams on the counter. And he was very effective at that. Manor Solomon, as we know, he's a good dribbler, kind of simple in the way that he does his dribbling, but he keeps it close, has good close control. And then compared to a lot of other wingers, I do think he has a shot on him, and he actually can find the back of the net. We saw that with Fulham. He loves that sort of cut inside, big curler. He was trying to do it for Spurs as well. It's just been very injury prone. He was injury prone at Shakhtar Donetsk. He was injury prone at Fulham, missed nearly the whole season. And he's kind of had that with Spurs as well. So that's my only reservation here with Solomon, is he actually just one of those injury prone players that you can't count on having for the majority of the season, because it has been a loss. I think we could have really used him this season, because you think of the chances that Werner has missed, or you think it's some of the chances that Kulusevski or others have missed, would have been nice to have a Solomon just instead, right? To think about a different option. And he could have been that goals threat. He could have been that extra option, and he could have surprised us, but hasn't really had that chance. And yeah, I'd like to keep him around and see what he can do next season. But let's say he picks up another injury next season and it's a long-term one. I'd actually look to move him on, because I think the signs have been sort of showing for a while now that despite him being a very talented player, a bit of injury prone, because I'm not kidding. It was also the case at Shakhtar Donetsk. So it looks like, he's going to retain his spot. And I think Johnson, we all know, is likely to stay for the long term. And yeah, you think he's, shown that he's not been a complete failure or anything like that, and is growing and growing into this team. And so he's definitely going to keep his spot there.
I'm changing my mind on Johnson,
I think you and I are.
Everywhere. I'm changing my mind on him, He's starting to do what I was asking him to do, become a lot more direct, use your pace to your benefit, start putting balls into the box and stuff like that. It looks like he's learning, so fair play.
I think you and I we're strong with our critiques, but we're strong with our happy clapping as well. And I think we're definitely leaning towards the happy clapping on Johnson of recent, that's for sure. I see about 3 or 4 positions that we freed up in this front line. Perisic, of course, is left. Hill is likely to leave. And then Werner seems to be the other one that we could free up a spot for. So 2 to 3 spots in that forward line I see being opened up. Who do we think we'll bring in, Dave? Is it going to be a winger? Is it going to be a striker? A bit of both? Which one is going to be the more expensive signing? How do you see that to end this off with?
Being brutally honest, I think we need a winger and a striker. Look, I know some people would say put Son up front, and let him compete with Richarlison. The problem that we've got on the horizon with Son coming in is the more we dominate possession, the more teams are going to sit back and play a low block. And even if that's not their intention coming into the game, because of the way you can force your opponent into stuff that they want to do. We could end up, we forced a lot of teams to do that. And I'd argue the longer the season has gone on, the less effective Son has been up front because of this, because we're dominating more possession and stuff like that. You also look at some of the games lately of Son, Luton, West Ham. He's getting frustrated. He's coming out of that number 9 position altogether. He's getting in Madden's way. A bit like Kulusevski when he's cutting inside. He's getting into other people's creative spaces and stuff like that. Son's starting to do that when he's dropping out of that number 9 position and stuff like that. For me, and he's one of his biggest weaknesses is playing with his back to goal and his strength. You look at West Ham. Anytime the ball came into Son, straight away they got physical on him and the ball started bouncing around the place. Luton scored when Son got caught in the middle with the ball. Back to goal. The ball off and went up, scored, got the early goal and stuff like that. So for me, I can see a potential problem on the horizon with that going forward into next season. So I do think we need to bring in a striker in here to go and compete with Richarlison. I get that people want Son to be the main man at Tottenham and be the source of all the goals, but he can't do that off the left-hand side. Once you get a proper striker in here, I actually don't blame Son. I actually think what Son's problem is he doesn't have someone of the same quickness of thought as Harry Kane, the same brain on the same wavelength that he had with Harry Kane. He is struggling because he doesn't have that partnership. You bring in a guy that he can bring that up with, that is as good, that is on his level, stuff like that. You'll see Son getting back to his best on the left-hand side. And with the way Postecoglou wants him to play, like I said, with teams more and more going to sit back against us, whether it's their tactics or whether we force them. Son's best attribute is running at teams, running at them with the ball. Postecoglou wants fast, direct wingers to beat their men on the outside. Get something back out on the wing and let him do that. He's made an absolute career out of it. And when you get another guy up front that's similar to his wavelength that he can play with, you will start seeing the 1-2s, which will free up Son coming back in off the left-hand side, being able to get his shots back in and stuff like that. So for me, you need a striker for that reason, but you also need another winger in here as well that's going to contribute as good as Son does when he's played off the left all them years. You need someone at that level. Now, there's a few that's being banded around going, because I know it's already going to come in the comments, Jack, that people are going to go, but we leak so many goals. We need to be better, more defensive and stuff like that. Now, the problem I have with that argument is that we're now playing an offensive system. Last season under Conte, which is what people are comparing it to, We played 11 men behind the ball to suit that back line, and they still conceded that amount of goals. We now defend with 2 centre backs. That's it, more or less. So, and we're playing an attacking system. So that's why we're nearly on par with the amount of goals we conceded. But that's not the problem. The problem is actually when we're in possession.
Scoring.
A lot of times people are coming back to the midfield, and I do it as well. I'm guilty of it, going, they're not good enough as well. But in reality, because the forward line aren't creating with the amount of possession we have, a lot of the balls coming back to midfield, and the onus is actually being put on them. If we had a more ruthless front line who were creating and had a bit more variety to their play, rather than just being able to take instructions and doing exactly what they're told. Sometimes in football, you have to think outside the box. And we don't have enough players that can do that. You get them players in, like Sonny, who can think outside the box and stuff like that. You create a lot more chances. And rather sitting there 1-0 up with the game sort of in a balance, you go 2-0 up, you go 3-0 up, you've killed off the team. That way, then, you kill their momentum. So they don't even have encouragement to come out and go forward. But when you don't have the forward line creating the amount of chances that we need, you're actually giving these guys encouragement. They know, they sit there, one break, that's all it's going to take. Whereas if you actually go bam, 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 quick succession, 2, 3, 4, be like what Man City and Liverpool do when they have dominant spells of possession, you kill off that belief, you put 3 points on the board, and it solves a lot of issues. And it solves the amount of times we get counted on as well. Because when we're popping the ball around the place, people are just waiting, pick it off, and we get counted a lot more. So we need to bring in quality in that forward line. It has to be quality. We can't have players that you're bringing in and are divisive in the fan base where they blow hot and cold. The reason why they're divisive is because the guys who are pro that player, he performs, and then they're like, you're in the mud. The next week, he doesn't perform, and the guys who maybe have critiques of that player go, you're in the mud. That tells us they aren't at it every single week, and that's a problem. So get me guys where we don't have to have them conversations.
I think you're spot on about kind of the difference between Conte's style and Ange's style, where Conte's style was about, you can grab a few goals, but it is more about just making it impossible for the other team to score. And usually you will score enough to win the game. Whereas with Ange's style, I think, we don't want to concede, but if we do concede, we back ourselves to score 3 or 4 past the opponent. Like, you're not going to be able to get away with, a clean sheet against this team. But weirdly enough, this season, we have struggled, right, to actually put the goal in the back of the net. We're very close. We're right in front of the goal. We're just screaming for these players to shoot. We're just screaming for these players to make something happen, or right in front of the goal to score. And they just they just show signs of inconsistency. Also kind of a lack of faith even in themselves, right? Often, to be able to put in the back of the net. A lot of these players really blow hot and cold, not even with their own quality, but with their own confidence, right? And when they find themselves in front of goal. And I think what we do need is bring in someone in this forward line that's probably just as confident, just as arrogant. I don't know if arrogant's the right word, but how's the cliche goes, that good kind of arrogance, right? As the cliche goes, kind of like what a player like a Sonny would have, or at least someone like a Sonny who's kind of been there, done that, like Sonny has, and backs themselves to score, knows that they're one of the best players in this league. And I think we only have one of them in that front line this season, and that's Sonny. And you and I banged about this for a while now. With losing Harry Kane, you're not only losing a huge source of goals and a huge source of creativity, you're actually losing the complement. You're losing the partner to the other world-class finisher, the other great creator in the team, Sonny. Sonny's now on his own. He doesn't have anybody on his level, on his wavelength, to complement him, to work with him. That's what made the Kane and Son relationship so beautiful, is that they complemented each other so perfectly. And we just don't have that anymore. So now it's hard to know where Sonny fits in best, because there's no one really to complement him. I think the easiest solution, like you say there, is bring in someone similar to a Harry Kane, or someone who can complement him, at least on being the same level as each other, and that they know how to read each other's game. They know what the other is thinking. And then also we know that Sonny, still to this day, one of his best attributes is that timing of that run in behind, catching the defense out when they least expect it, because he's almost never offsides. And then when he is played clean through, he's probably the most ruthless player in the world when it comes to those one-on-one chances with the keeper. And we just haven't seen enough of that this season, I think, because we are missing that compliment that Harry Kane used to provide him. And Richarlison has done his best. He's just not that sort of guy either, right? And so that's why I think this summer we should look at someone who can be a target man, but maybe also add that bit extra of being able to bring Sonny into the game off the left wing, which is where you and I think his best work is still done.
I think exactly, you're spot on. When you were speaking there, it sort of brought a phase round to me, Jack. You look at our front line this season, they're all playing as individuals. when we've watched Tottenham's front lines down the years, even beyond Son and Kane, you've had fluidity. Like they could link up, they could play with each other. And what I'm going to say here is that
because they would be on their own and they would still play with each other pretty well. They would complement each other well. They would have none of the balls sometimes, our front three, and they would still, like you say, they had a little fluidity to them that we don't see as much today. That's a good point.
Yeah, everyone is all individual. You know, there's none of that fluidity. There's no link-up play. They don't know each other's movements. And my case, you know, people are getting excited because Werner and Johnson have combined for 3 goals this season. That says everything we need to know. We're celebrating them combining for 3 goals. Kane and Son used to combine for about 15 a season. You know, oh, this is a partnership we should look at going forward and stuff like that. We know the benchmark of what good forward players that are on it, you know, scare oppositions and can really drag you forward. We know that. We've had benchmark the last few years, and even beyond Son and Kane, the benchmark has been set. Let's not settle for this. In order for us to start purring, start killing teams off, you know, we've got to get more deadly in the forward line. Because when we're not deadly in the forward line, there's almost a sinking feeling in us fans where we go, we're in trouble here. The opposition will get one attack and they'll go and score. If we're feeling it, you best goddamn believe on the pitch they're also in the same sort of mindset. So that's why I keep banging on about the forward line now. You go and kill teams, it completely eradicates all them feelings.
I'm completely in agreement. I think we need to bring in a winger and a striker of top quality this summer. I think there's easily spots for 2 to be filled. If you're able to, you know, not bring in Werner on a permanent, I'd argue there's probably 3 spots that could be filled. We also are going to be playing more games anyway next season, likely. So we will definitely need to bring in at least 2, and I think 2 of high quality. Any final words from yourself there, Dave, before we let this go? Please, everybody, get your comments in, smash that like button as well. But yeah, Dave, any final words?
Yeah, look, you know, make sure you tune out for all the match day stuff coming up as well ahead of the Forest game. Game at the weekend. Hopefully you get the 3 points. And thank you for listening to us. Share your opinions in the comment section below. Let us know your thoughts. And if it's okay to disagree, you can do that. Just let us know why. But yeah, that's all I got to say, Jack. Thank you very much to everyone for tuning in today.
Everybody, we'll leave you for next time. Come on, you Spurs. In the Big Ange we trust. We never stop. We'll be seeing you. Everywhere we go.